is Alexandria, and some of you may know me as AOC.
You have not really needed so far to take many foreign policy positions because you were seating a Democratic incumbent. But now you are very likely going to be going to Washington, and you'll have to sort of build out some of those foreign policy positions. You, in the campaign, made one tweet or made one statement that referred to a killing by Israeli soldiers of civilians in Gaza and called it a massacre, which became a little bit controversial. But I haven't seen anywhere. What is your position on Israel?
Well, I believe absolutely in Israel's right to exist. I am a proponent of a two-state solution. And for me, this is not a referendum, I think, on the state of Israel. For me, the lens through which I saw this incident as an activist, as an organizer, if 60 people were killed in Ferguson, Missouri, if 60 people were killed in the South Bronx, unarmed, 60 people were killed in Puerto Rico, I just looked at that incident more through just as an incident. And to me, it would just be completely unacceptable if that happened on our shores. But I am...
Of course, the dynamic there in terms of geopolitics and the war in the Middle East is very different than people expressing their First Amendment right to protest.
Well, yes, but I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that to me is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also just, I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue. You know, for me, I'm a firm believer in finding a two-state solution in this issue. And I'm happy to sit down with leaders on both of these. For me, I just look at things through a human rights lens, and I may not use the right words. I know this is
That's very honest. That's very honest. And you're going
issue.
I mean, it's very honest. And when you get to Washington and you're an elected member of Congress, you'll have the opportunity to talk to people on all sides and visit Israel and visit the West Bank. And
absolutely. And I think that's one of those things that's important too. Is that especially with the district that I represent. I come from the South Bronx. I come from a Puerto Rican background, and Middle Eastern politics is not exactly what's at my kitchen table every night. But I also recognize that this is an intensely important issue for people in my district, for Americans across the country. And I think what's at least important to communicate is that I'm willing to listen and that I'm willing to learn and evolve on this issue, like I think many Americans are.
As a millennial progressive, how do you reflect on President Obama's legacy?
You know, I think for me, I try to look through President Obama's legacy through as clear eyes as I possibly can. You know, I think that he mobilized. I certainly phone banked for him in 2008 as a young college student, and I think that I acknowledge that he came in, his administration came in at a very difficult time. You know, he came in the pitch of a financial crisis. He came in to just, I think, unprecedented obstructionism from the Republican Party. He came at a time when I believe that the Republican Party started putting party over people. And that has created just a very destabilizing dynamic. I think that he tried. You know, I think he did his best. I do have my critiques. I think that we got a little bit too corporate friendly in terms of policies, in terms of how we recovered from the financial crisis. I don't agree with all of our foreign policy and drone strikes. But I also acknowledge that we did make progress during his presidency, and I do think that it's my responsibility and our generation's responsibility to build on that.
Well, with any luck, you'll be going to Congress, and you'll be able to do that, hopefully, when you get to Washington. The set of skills that it took for you to canvass the district, the 14th District of New York, to identify who your voters could be, to get them registered and to the polls, was an extraordinary feat. And it's a set of skills that got you to the point now where you're going to go to Washington, and now you have a whole new set of challenges in terms of integrating the ideas that you've espoused and been elected on into a democratic establishment that is pre-existing. So have you thought about how you're going to be effective as a spokesperson for a new set of ideas?
I actually don't think that once you win an election, you put down your clipboards and you just head to Washington and you use a totally different set of skills. There are certainly additional skills that you need when you get there, but I'm a firm believer in the fact that organizing never stops and organizing never ends. And I actually believe that there's a profound amount of power, persuasion, and influence that's possible when you organize outside that chamber to really impact what's going on inside that chamber. And one of the things that we kind of talked about on our campaign was people versus money. And I think that when you can organize a mass amount of people, you can create a lot of pressure on incumbents to change. And so for me, it's not, I don't intend to put down my bullhorn. And I think that if anything, we've been trusted with a much larger one. And my constituents have hired me. They have voted for me to be a very fierce and unapologetic voice in Washington. And I don't think that that necessarily means antagonistic. I don't think that it means that you fight for the sake of fighting, but I do think it means that you don't compromise your values and your message. And I hope to at least be that kind of voice of clarity in Washington in a time when there seems to be so much discord.
You gave a very forceful speech on the House floor Friday about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. You called on President Biden to cut off U.S. military aid to Israel. I think we have a clip of part of what you said. Let's roll that.
If you want to know what an unfolding genocide looks like, open your eyes. It looks like the forced famine of 1.1 million innocents. We must write our story in this moment of what it means and who we are as Americans. And our story must be not that we were good men who did nothing.
Clearly, not enough aid is getting in. Clearly, the conditions for the Palestinian people are horrific and much more needs to be done. Genocide is a word that has serious and specific connotations and allegations. It's defined by the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So you, just to clarify here, you believe the Israeli military, the Israeli government are actively trying, they intend to destroy the Palestinian people, and not that what's happening is horrible, but it's happening because Israel is going after the terrorists of Hamas who attacked them on October 7th, and Hamas embeds within the civilian population?
Well, Jake, you're absolutely right. This word is extremely serious. It's one that's taken with extraordinary gravity. And to me, the threshold of intent is a high one. It is a serious one and is not one that is made lightly. However, when we look at the precipice of what is happening with a forced famine of 1.1 million Gazans, where multiple governments, NGOs, and even officials within the United States State Department have stated themselves plainly that the Israeli government and leaders in the Israeli government are intentionally denying, blocking, and slow walking this aid and are precipitating a mass famine. I believe we have crossed the threshold of intent. It is horrific. I think it is extremely clear and it is extremely important that all people understand the difference between people and their governments, Israelis and the Israeli government, Palestinians from Hamas. But what we are seeing here, I think, with a forced famine is beyond our ability to deny or explain away. There is no targeting of Hamas in precipitating a mass famine of 1 million people, half of whom are children.
So I asked Israeli officials about your speech, and they say we are allowing hundreds of aid trucks into Gaza every single day. They're trying to increase those numbers. They have to inspect the cargo to make sure no weapons are getting in, weapons that would be used by Hamas against the people of Israel. Israeli officials also argue this war could end tomorrow if Hamas freed the hostages and laid down the arms. Do you disagree?
I do disagree, because when we are talking about famine, the actions of Hamas should not be tied to whether a 3-year-old can eat. The actions of Hamas do not justify forcing thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to eat grass as their bodies consume themselves. We and the Israeli government has a right to go after Hamas. But we are talking about a population of millions of innocent Palestinians. We are talking about collective punishment, which is injustifiable. And the excuses that the Israeli government is giving about what they are and are not allowing simply do not square with what the UK government is stating, with what international aid organizations are stating, and even what our own State Department officials are stating, which is that they are not allowing aid to go through. When they're talking about inspections, we're talking about U.S. aid, the United States aid. And so I think that if we are to operate as allies, then we must operate in good faith to uphold the principles of democracy, which includes respect for human rights, and also proving the value of our democracy, which is that we are different than authoritarian, and we are different from other types of regimes with no regard for innocent people.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.